Hey, everybody. Today for you, podcast number 44. Today's podcast is titled Soaked to the Bone. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Lombardi, and this is the Limitless Life Network podcast where we flesh out the limitations that are preventing you from reaching your goals and living the life that you were called to lead. Now, if you've listened to other podcasts, you just noticed that maybe I changed my intro verse right there, called to lead. I used to say that you deserved, and I changed it to called to lead because, and deserve sounds like you're entitled to something. And I don't believe you're just necessarily entitled to, happiness or a trophy or anything like that. I think that you're called for something special. And I want to help you to discover that. And if you have discovered it, I want you to just live it out and lead it for God's glory. So that's why we changed that today. So way to notice that. Hopefully you did. Anyway, I want to take a moment to thank you for listening. Appreciate your time. And I will not waste it because I've got a great topic today for you. And I appreciate the comments. I love hearing people telling me what they got out of the podcast or just, that they like it and they listen to it on their way to work or, the stories, they're just so meaningful and I so appreciate it. It fills me up. It fills me up and with gratitude and so thankful for you. So if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, hit the subscribe button. We're available on all these streaming platforms, as you know. And share it with a friend. If you have a friend or coworker or a family member that needs some positive, encouraging, uplifting information, pass it along. No rules against that, and also no rules against leaving a positive comment or a thumbs up, whatever these different buttons that you have on your browser. I don't know. If you want to leave a review, that's great too. It always pushes the algorithm that drives it into people's feeds. So the more people listening in, then the better. So, all right, on with the show. Let me tell you all about this title, Soaked to the Bone. It's a cool story. At least I think it was cool. I was involved in it. Soaked to the Bone. Last Saturday morning, my son Luke and I decided to go on a hike. We drove up to our camp and on Friday night and spent the night. And Luke wanted to hike in the morning, so we picked one of our favorite short hikes because we had a couple of things to do later in the day. And so we picked Blue Mountain, which is in Blue Mountain, New York. And you can look it up if you want to learn about what that hike's all about. But it's a 2-mile hike. It's not really long. It's 2 miles up, 2 miles down. Really nice one that you can do round trip, but it is pretty steep the whole way. There's not a lot of flat in this hike, and so we decided to go. We looked at the forecast when we got up, and the forecast said no rain really until the afternoon. So we're like, perfect. We'll get out there, we'll hike, we'll be out of there by early afternoon, 12:30, 1 o'clock at the latest. Maybe we'll get a little wet on the way down. No big deal. Anyway, we got about a 20-minute drive from our camp to get to the mountain, to the trailhead. So we get outside and it starts to rain as we get into the truck to drive there. And I'm like, it'll probably let up on the way. They're not really calling for rain right now anyway, right? So it pours the entire drive there. And as a matter of fact, we pull into the parking lot for the trailhead and it's an absolute downpour, the kind of one where people pull over on the side of the road because their wipers can't keep up with how fast the rain's coming down. And I look at Luke and I'm like, do we really want to do this? And he's like, we're here. So we put our camel packs on our backs and we put our raincoats over them and we put our hoods up and out of the vehicle we went and on the trail we went and we started hiking. And as we hiked, we noticed that our raincoats were helpful, but our legs were getting soaked, our feet were getting soaked. I mean, I had really good hiking boots on, and within no time, you were realizing that this was going to be a rainy, wet, soggy hike. And we were just joking the whole time, like, yeah, I think my feet are bone dry, even though they were absolutely soaked. Anyway, we had a great time. And as we hiked, it gets steeper and steeper. And the closer you get to the top, it gets really, really steep until it levels off a little bit right before you get to the top. But you're literally walking up this rock, and it's super steep, and it's a river of water just gushing down in your path. So you're walking up this stream of water the entire time, and it is so neat. It was so cool. And as I looked around, and I'm like, wow, there's really not anybody out here. This is amazing. And I just kind of was shocked at how much more I was enjoying it. And because it was raining, I was constantly being cooled off. So I never really got very thirsty. I think I may have taken 2 swigs on my out of my water on the way up, because I was kind of drinking the rainwater a little bit as I was talking to my son, because it was just literally pouring in our face. So anyway, great time. We got to the top. It stopped raining for a moment, and we climbed up into the fire tower and looked around, and it was the neatest scene. And pictures really didn't do it justice. I mean, we did take some photos, but it was absolutely breathtaking. You couldn't see that far, but what you could see just had such a cool color to it, and the clouds looked so cool the way they separated. It was just awe-inspiring. It was absolutely amazing. And I kept thinking to myself, man, whoa, I can't believe I've never experienced this in this type of scenario before. And I thought, how lucky we are, how wonderful this is. And then we started hiking down, and of course it started raining again. So anyway, that was our hike. And from this, I drew 5 points. I probably could have drew 10 points out of it, but let's stick with 5 because that's kind of our usual. And so that's what we're talking about today. Point number 1 is you don't know what you don't experience. And too often times, and this is what I thought about, was that too often times we stop before we start. We think about doing something, and then we never initiate it. We never actually engage in something because, we kind of talk ourselves out of it. And I almost started to do it. I almost thought about, like, even though we were there and it's absolutely pouring, there was a part of me that said, hey, why do we want to go out there and get soaked to the bone when we could literally just turn around and go back to our dry camp and do something productive there? And he said, well, we're here. And I'm like, okay, you got a point. We are here. And I'm like, well, I guess we're not made of sugar. So it literally is like, if we didn't get out of the vehicle, if we didn't decide to leave the comfort of where we were, we'd have never experienced the sights that we saw, the feelings that we felt, the smells, the tastes of the water. I mean, everything. Like, you got all of your senses stimulated. Not to mention, it was a fabulous workout. I mean, I felt fantastic physically afterwards as well as during. I was actually kind of patting myself on the back that I felt really healthy doing it. So the experience was absolutely wonderful, and I almost didn't do it. So you don't know what you don't experience. So my advice to you is experience it, even though maybe you don't think it's going to be that good, because you'll never know. It might be amazing. Number 2 is, it kind of goes to the beginning of the hike too. And that is that find your rhythm, and it's going to come to you. And that's kind of what it was like getting out of the vehicle. It was like, all of a sudden you're going from dry to being pelted with cold raindrops. And you're like, okay, my raincoat is absorbing a lot of this. It's taking I'm not getting soaked all over the place. But after a while, everything that's running off your raincoat is running all over your body, and your legs are getting colder, and your feet, you can start to feel your feet getting wet, and your socks are getting wet. Now your socks are soaked, and your feet are squishing around your boots, and after a while, you're like, oh my gosh, there's no not getting wet on this hike at all. We're just going to be getting soaked. And next thing you know, you're not even uncomfortable anymore. You've acclimated to it. And that's what happened. I found a rhythm and it actually felt good. In other words, my body temperature was going up, but I was constantly being cooled by the rain and it felt good. I felt like I could just keep going and going and going. And that's how it can be sometimes. Sometimes initially when you start any endeavor and it may seem a little difficult at first, uncomfortable, like awkward because you've never done it before, just the point is you just got to keep sticking with it and keep trudging forward. No, and I'm not just talking about hiking or running or exercise, any endeavor. I mean, it could be a mental endeavor. It could be, a homework assignment. It could be some other type of activity. It could be doing your taxes for anything like that. But once you get into it and you get into a rhythm, you start to develop momentum and you start to really find your pace. So that's super important. So find your rhythm. That's point number 2. Point number 3 is this, and that is a rainstorm is a reminder. What the heck's that mean? A rainstorm is a reminder, much like any type of experience that you can have that reminds you of how amazing this world is. The world that we live in is just chock full of examples that strike awe and wonder into how amazing this world is. And an example could be the birth of a baby. Another example could be a blizzard or a sunrise or a sunset. I mean, most people can get behind sunrise and sunset because it's not cold and it's not wet, right? But that's just like a really wonderful thing. And you're like, wow, that is so beautiful, right? The clouds are so beautiful. The sky is beautiful. The mountains are gorgeous. But like all of these things in nature are awe-inspiring. The birth of a new baby, like that is awe-inspiring. And we get so caught up in the everyday, day-to-day stuff that we need reminders. So instead of being like upset that it's raining out today or upset that, it hasn't rained in months or whatever it might be and your lawn gets dry, be reminded of just how amazing this world is and how many rainstorms have occurred since God flooded the world with Noah, right? Like how many rainstorms since then have occurred, none that have flooded the earth entirely, right? But the point is that we need to be reminded of our place for one, and that we are in a world that is a world where we're loved, right? Like our Creator loves us. And he's keeping us safe, and our world is designed that way. There's timing to everything. These seasons come and go, and some winters have more snow, and some summers have more rain, and some summers are dry, but it always seems to work out. It always seems that fall continues to come and winter comes, and it always seems to work out. The weatherman can make all the hype in the world over all these different changes, but you know what? It always seems to work out. And that's it. Just we continue to survive, and it's an absolutely amazing thing. So we need those reminders of the awesome power of God and the awesome world that we live in that He's created here for us. So absolutely amazing. So point number 4 is an analogy, and I think this is really important. And I've touched on this on the last couple podcasts. This point. But this was an analogy or a metaphor that I heard or I read about the other day, and I thought this was very applicable, especially when we're talking about rainstorms. And it goes kind of like this, and that's the question of like, how come it seems like some people are always way more blessed and feel so much more grateful than other people? It just seems like some people, it never seem to get ahead. They always have a cloud over them or whatever it might be. And the example is that imagine you have 2 cups. One cup is upside down and one cup is upside right. And then you take a bucket of water and pour it over equally over both of them. And then you analyze them afterwards and which one has water in it, right? And if the water is the blessings of life, the cup is you and your readiness to receive, right? So sometimes we are not wanting the blessings. We're trying to do it on our own. We're too proud or whatever it might be. But we get in our own way sometimes because we're not ready to receive or we don't think we're worthy of it enough. And sometimes we just need to be reminded that, it's available all the time. That water is constantly flowing, right? That God's love is always available, right? His forgiveness, his grace is always available. You just have to be willing to receive it. How cool is that? That's amazing, right? And some people want it so bad that they'll go to extra lengths, right? They'll get a bigger cup because they want to receive it so badly, right? And they'll turn it over and they'll hold it upside right to make sure that they receive the blessing. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having a heart for wanting to receive the blessings that God has in store for you. So you have permission to do that for sure. And point number 5 is it's not the fear you're thinking of. It's not the fear you're thinking of. Our pastor this week was talking about the fear of God, and I think that he made a very good point. It's not the fear that you're thinking of, and I'm reiterating it today because it's such a good point. People don't want to be fearful in the sense of fear like danger and scared. Fearing God is a healthy respect. It's an awe. It's a wonder. It's an amazement of just how sovereign and how big He is. And I was reminded on Saturday about that bigness, how big God really is, as we were climbing up His mountain. And as we were experiencing one of His many rainstorms, as we were watching all the things of nature unfold, the erosion, the trees fighting to, survive and just drinking that water up, and the root systems, like it all works in perfect harmony. And as soon as the rain stops, the bugs come out. And as soon as the rain comes, the bugs go away. Like, how does that even work? How does that all work in such specific, perfect harmony? And nobody's telling it to do it like, hey, you're cue now to come out, bugs. Like it just happens automatically. Like, that's amazing. And that's the respect. That's the real fear. It's not a fear of being scared. It's a fear of respect and awe. And that's something that everybody needs. And that's something that's sorely missing in our world today, in our cultures today. Because we're taught that it's not about God, it's about you, and that you're supposed to be the sovereign one. And that is leading to more confusion and more chaos and more problems than we can shake a stick at. And it's creating more limitations in people's lives, and you don't even realize it because you're doing what the majority of people are doing, and that's not having that healthy respect and enjoying that awe. So I encourage you to take a healthy look at that and see where your cup is. Okay, see, is your cup open for the blessings, and are you fearing God? Are you having that healthy respect, that awe, and just that amazement of the amazing blessings that are available all the time for you? So I hope this was encouraging. I know I've been encouraged by doing the podcast, and my wife couldn't be with us this week. She would have surely been here, but she's with my daughter, our daughter, up at our camp, and they'll be back for next week. So actually, I don't know if she'll be on next week either. But anyway, 4th of July is coming up. We'll try to get it recorded ahead of time. Thank you all for joining. That's all for this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. Tune in each and every week so that we can stay connected, be inspired, and keep moving toward your best life by stripping away your limitations. And I'm super excited to see you all back again next week. We'll see you then. Bye now.